Welcome to A Healthy Bite. You're one nibble closer to a more satisfying way of life, a healthier you, and bite-sized bits of healthy motivation. Now let's dig in on the dish with Rebecca Huff.
I'm here with Mannette Morgan, and she's going to talk to us about a really important subject. During the pandemic that's been going on with our current crisis here, there's been an increase in calls to the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, right? And at the same time, there's been a decrease in staffing, which obviously creates a huge problem. So I wanted to talk to you and hopefully get some tips and strategies for people who may be a victim of abuse and they're just not able to get the help that they need right now. Maybe they don't know what to do, or maybe they're even trying to get through to this hotline and they're struggling. So what can you share with us, Mannette?
I think first and foremost, let's just be clear. If you're in a dangerous situation, okay, first and foremost, call 911. Okay.
Yes.
And I realize there's also some things going on with that right now. And
Right.
I'm very aware. But the fact is, most of those professionals out there, they want to help you and they're going to do their best to help you get you out of a life-threatening situation. Okay. So that's just, without being said, I know that's probably simple to most people out there, but I just love to remind people that's your first and foremost choice. Now, if you're not in a life-threatening situation, okay, that's the people reaching out to the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. And I realize that things are different. Our life is different and people are overwhelmed. But there's other organizations out there, guys. I mean, there's tons of them. There's loveisrespect.org, womenslaw.org. I love that organization because they actually have ways you can filter state by state to find things more local to you that might be able to help. Rain.org is a great, huge sexual type abuse thing. But they handle other stuff as well. And I think for me, I encourage you, go to my website, MannetteMorgan.com. So that's MANNETTE, Morgan, MORGAN. And I have links to every one of these organizations and more, because I do know what it's like when you're out there trying to figure out what to do next. And sometimes with everything happening, it's kind of volatile right now. And sometimes we're on a tipping point of this could go really bad in your home. So I encourage you to go there, start finding the resources, and reach out to get the help you need. So that would be my suggestion at this point. And I realize it's really hard. And I'm always saying, never give up. If one doesn't work, go to another one, go to another one, go to another one until you find one that can help get you what you need.
Good advice. You said if you're not in a life-threatening situation. So when we think of abuse, I think a lot of us think of like these worst case scenarios, what we've seen on TV where people are in these life-threatening situations. So what is all abuse physical, and what constitutes abuse?
Okay, no, yeah, all abuse is not physical. I think, there's physical to sexual, there's emotional, psychological. And I think that's where we get into those areas that people aren't real comfortable or know. I always say that, how do you recognize emotional or psychological abuse if that's all you've known your whole life? If that's what you grew up in and that was your normal, how do you even know what that is? And I see so many women and other victims out there as well questioning, well, he kind of controls things, but he's not hitting me. Your question is so valid because psychological and emotional abuse comes in so many forms. And that's why I think it makes it so much harder to identify, because it can be just controlling. It can be manipulation. It can be threatening violence. My husband did that. He threatened, but he never hit me. It can be controlling who your friends are, what family members you interact with, how your access to your phone, your internet. There's things that go on behind closed doors that I don't think people are aware of. And it's just really, really, it's challenging sometimes for some of us to say, whoa, that's abuse. That's not okay. That's really unhealthy behaviors. So I also great. It's also on my website. If you just go down a little further, I know I'm giving you a lot of direction, but there's this thing called helpguide.org, and they're great at explaining abuse. So if you're in a relationship and you're questioning, am I in an abusive relationship? Go there and look it up. They'll give you a lot of scenarios and ideas to understand what you're in. Are you dealing with a narcissist? Are you dealing with someone that's just, so insecure and controlling because they're fearful? Are you dealing with someone that's just so dominating? I always say, look at our society today. In schools, we have bullying. That's abuse. In corporate world, all these women coming forward and people over these last years, these men are abusing their power and controlling and manipulating. It's abuse. It's harassment. So I think it's just understanding all the different things.
Wow. Yes, that is true. And I think for a lot of people who have experienced abuse, I think finding out that abuse isn't always physical can be just a hard thing to get through, just when you realize, oh, I have been in an abusive relationship. That's what that was. Okay.
Exactly.
And then just processing those feelings. So perhaps someone might be listening to this podcast today and they're realizing, okay, this is abuse, like withholding financial.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a form of abuse. So say someone is listening and they realize that they are in an abusive relationship, like how can they make some changes and get started in a path for healing?
I always say I express a lot, and I've been talking about this a lot lately because of our circumstances. Because a little background on this, just so I can tell you, is what we're seeing, I feel, is a lot of people that are, cooped up at home. And now we're finally getting out a little in some states. But all of this stress of the unknowns, and I talk about the what ifs a lot. What if I get sick? What if things don't get better? What if I can't pay my bills? There's some big things going on in our lives right now. And if you're in a situation that's volatile and you have someone that tends to be abusive, like I said, it can be a tipping point at this point to where it becomes more physical and other things. But emotional abuse is very detrimental in itself. So I really encourage you to realize, you've got to make some moves sometimes. Sometimes it's the getting help. The getting help are the organizations we talked about. Make a plan. If you find yourself in something that is going really badly and you're identifying it now as abuse, make a plan. Get a lawyer, get help, get a support system, find a place to go, maybe even stay. Do your work. And then I think secondly, it's getting out. And for someone that's never been in an abusive situation, they don't have any concept of how hard that is. I have people ask me all the time, why don't they just leave? Why do they go back? And I'm like, once you've experienced abuse in your life, my theory is it takes our self-worth, our value, our self-respect. And without that, an individual just doesn't have the strength they normally would. And that's why people go back. Everyone on this planet, every human being wants to be loved. Everyone. Every victim, every survivor wants to be loved. And in so many situations, they feel like that abuser loves them. And if you read the book, I talk a lot about lambs versus monsters. And that's a great explanation, because your abuser will not be a monster every minute of every day.
Of course.
He has moments, and I'm saying he because of more women and I'm a woman, but he has moments of love and kindness and caring. And he may even regret what he does to the nth degree, but he doesn't know how to change or fix it. So I think it's just recognizing that all of this stuff is so true, that, we have abuse is prevalent. And I always encourage people, and if you're listening and you're a survivor and you're a victim out there, one, you're not alone. There are millions of us out there. Two, you can break the cycle in your life. I did it. You can. You can do it. Requires a little work, but it can be done. And 3, you deserve more than the abuse you've experienced in your life. Those are my 3 key points if someone's listening, because I feel like it takes an awakening, is what I call it. We all need an awakening sometime to realize that, wow, this is not healthy. This is not normal. This is not good for me or my children. And I think it's so important to have that little personal awakening so we can have the courage to get out, like I talked about. So you get the help, you get out, and then you stop the cycle. And we can talk about that, but that's just even more in depth. That's the healing process. That's changing that thing from being not valued to being valued, to having self-respect. So that's that shift that happens when we start and we're able to break that cycle.
I do want to talk about those strategies, but you said that sometimes people ask you, why did they go back or why did they stay? And as you were talking through that, I was thinking, just because someone is abusive towards you doesn't mean that you don't love them. I mean, you're with that person for a reason. So, I mean, it is, I'm sure, hard and a confusing situation to be in when you love someone who also abuses you. And then the other aspect is resources. So a lot of times I feel like people in abusive situation maybe stay in it because they feel like they don't have the resources to do something different. So I think those are a couple of things. Do you address those in your book at all?
I address resources for healing and how to empower yourself and those things. But I do know a lot of people that stay because financially they don't want to leave when we talk about those kinds of resources.
Yeah.
And it's scary out there. I mean, it's not always pretty. When I left, I didn't have an advanced education. It was me and my children. I was severely dyslexic. I really struggled. I had a little small design business, but it wasn't making that much money. I had to go out and go in sales and learn a new way to take care of myself. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that every case is terrible, every case is easy. I ended up, after my repercussions of leaving, I filed bankruptcy and lost everything I had. So, but it was worth it. I'm going to say this, it was so worth it. Because I went on and had other relationships that were healthy, loving, caring, supportive. Yes, I so want everyone else to have a life free of abuse is what I always say. I just wrote an article talking about it. And I'm like, I just want you to be free from it. I also have blogs and inspirational posts on LinkedIn and Facebook if you want to follow me or something, because I really try to just inspire you and let you know that you have choices. We all have choices.
Yes.
Sometimes those choices aren't easy, but they're still a choice.
And the perception of choice changes everything.
It does.
It does. Thank you, Mannette, for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me, Rebecca. This was great and nice and casual. And I enjoyed, I love what you asked because it gets people thinking. And I think that's so important.
Well, hopefully this helps some people out there that may have been struggling and wondering what to do. So thank you again so much for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Anytime.
Thanks for listening. Please rate and review so other people can learn about this podcast. Find out more about sleep, hygiene, eating healthy, tasty recipes, zero waste lifestyle, and lots more on thatorganicmom.com. Help us spread the word. Be blessed and stay healthy.